Hi guys, my name is Daphne and I'm going to tell you about my story of chronic illness and how I turned around my life, which was pretty much over when I was at my worst. And so let me start with a little bit about me. I'm 34 years old. I'm married. I have a husband, Pete, and we have 3 daughters, ages 2, 5, and 6. You're going to see me looking at my notes just so that I kind of keep on track here. So I got my bachelor's in education from Michigan State University, and then I taught for 6 years. 3 years I taught in Detroit through a program called Teach for America. It was really awesome. I also have a master's degree from the University of Michigan in Education, Administration, and Policy. I have had a debilitating, mysterious, frustrating, chronic illness for the past few years, and I really struggled to figure out what was going on. I felt a lot of the time like I was completely crazy, and it wasn't just me. I think a lot of people feel that way, and so that's why I'm filming this, even though probably there's going to be people who watch this and say that I'm crazy anyway. Let's see. We were never sure what was wrong with me. I had a battery of tests. I had all of the tests that you can imagine, blood tests, MRIs, CTs, everything. And almost everything always came back completely normal. And yet I knew I wasn't normal because I had debilitating symptoms that made it impossible for me to live my life. And my symptoms were consistent with conditions like ME/CFS, long COVID, mold illness or SEERS, POTS, EDS, chronic Lyme, SIBO, fibromyalgia, MCAS. The list goes on. And these chronic illnesses, they often overlap. People often have multiple of these conditions at the same time. And I couldn't figure out which one of these I had. I feel like I could have thrown a dart and it could have been any of them. And I had pretty much, as of the end of last year, 2024, I had pretty much given up hope. I thought that this was it. My life was over at the age of 34. I thought I was dying, honestly. And I didn't think I was ever going to go back to normal. I had quit my job because I couldn't work anymore. And that was really, really hard for me to admit. I'm very type A. I'm extremely hardworking. I never give up on things. I really push through. And I had to admit to myself for the first time in my life, I can't do it anymore. I can't even take care of myself. I can't feed myself. I can't help with the care of my 3 children. And it was horrible. I can't even explain how horrible it was, but I'm going to try in this video. And this is the story of how my illness started and progressed and got to the point where I thought I was going to die. And then how I figured out what was wrong and how I fixed it. And now I'm getting back my life, back to normal, back to how I was. And I know that this is the dream and the hope of everyone who's going through chronic illness. And I'm not telling this story, to give false hope to anyone. I don't think that what was wrong with me is what's wrong with everyone. Of course not. That's not possible. But if everyone hears the story and anyone is helped, then I've done what I could. And that's my goal, is just help one person who was where I was at to even have hope that things are going to go back to normal. So yeah, I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. First of all, I'm not a doctor. As I told you, I have a degree in education. So I don't know anything about medicine other than what I have put the last few months into full-time researching. And I'm not discounting that. It was a lot of work, but I'm not a doctor and I haven't gone to medical school, and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I did and what worked for me. And the other thing is that, and it's really important to me to tell you this, I'm not selling anything. I'm not going to make money off of telling my story. I don't intend to make money. I don't want to make money off of this. That's like a personal thing for me. A lot of people in this kind of chronic illness space, first of all, they're vulnerable, they're desperate. I was desperate, and I would have done anything. I would have done anything if someone told me that I could get my health back. And I just want to make sure that I'm not in this just to take advantage of you. I'm not. I don't want to do that. I'm also planning on posting kind of more of a short form version of this, but first I wanted to just go ahead and film my whole story, like start to finish, and it is going to be long. And then, from there I can go down and I can cut it down for people and summarize, and I can put it in text formats if that's easier for people. When I was at my most sick, I couldn't really read, and we'll go into why that is. It sounds ridiculous to someone who's healthy, but someone who's been there, you understand. I couldn't read. I wasn't reading. I couldn't do anything, right? So when I was at my worst, sometimes I could listen. I could listen to short form content, sometimes long form content, and sometimes, in pieces. I would listen to books. I would listen to podcasts, especially things about science and things about getting better and how I could do that. So if you are sick the way that I was, maybe you could listen to this while you're driving, to work or wherever it is that you go, commuting. If you're having a good day, maybe you could listen to this while you take a walk. For me, getting even just a little bit of exercise, it was extremely helpful. And if you're having a bad day, which for me, it was most days, you could listen to this while you lay on the couch, right? While you lay there and while you eat a meal you have to eat to continue to live. Maybe you're on a liquid diet, listen while you sip, okay? People might want to know why I'm sharing this. It's really vulnerable, and I know that I'm gonna subject myself to everyone, saying all kinds of stuff, and that's fine. I posted my story in a couple of Facebook groups that I'm a member of, and I just can't believe the response that I got. People were so excited, and I got so many messages, like hundreds of messages from people all over the world who said, "Oh my God, you're me. I have the same story. I have the same symptoms." And then I was like, oh, it's not just me. I've maybe found something that could really help people. I was raised in a home with really strong spiritual values, we'll say. And I'm not even gonna get through this. Okay, keep it together, Daphne. You are like 5 minutes into this video. Okay. Before my dad died, he taught me that the greatest wealth in life is service to other people. And when you teach other people, they in turn can go and teach other people, and then it just keeps going forward. One of the books that I read when I was at my most down was called Think Like a Monk. It's by an author called Jay Shetty, and he's amazing. If you haven't read the book, you should. But he says in his book, when you expand your vision, you realize that even people who have it all derive the greatest satisfaction from service. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm sharing my story. I want to offer a quick trigger warning for you on severe depression, hopelessness, and suicidality. If you are in the dark place, which is what I call it, if you are in the dark place and you know it and you need help, I want you to stop watching this video. I want you to go get help, and then I want you to come back when you are out of the dark place and you're ready to hear the message and learn from it, and then hopefully bring it to someone else. All right, so let's start at the beginning, how it all started. I'm not entirely sure. I can't pinpoint the day. It's pretty rare in conditions like long COVID or CFS where people can say, oh, it was, April 5th, no. It kind of progresses slowly, at least for me it did. It started just with fatigue. It just started with being tired. And around the time when all of this stuff started for me, there were a few things that happened kind of all at once that could have contributed. I think they probably all played a role. Around this time, I lost my dad to cancer. He was 57 and he was the light of my life. And huge emotional traumas like that, they impact you. They impact your mind, your body, and your soul, right? My family, myself, my husband, my daughters, we got COVID in 2021, like a lot of other people, right? I don't know, most people got it. We had been vaccinated and we still got it. So it's a huge injury to the immune system. I had a pretty minor case. It wasn't that bad. It was like a flu. But the fact that I had it, and then shortly thereafter, I started developing some really debilitating symptoms. This is one of the theories that my doctor had, was that it was long COVID. So he had talked about me going to see a long COVID clinic. I never ended up doing that. But I could see someone else with exactly my same kind of fact pattern, assuming it's long COVID and going down that route. I also had a few babies back to back. We had our daughter Nina in 2018. It was everything I ever wanted. My one goal in life was to be a mom. I was overwhelmed with joy when we had her. It was everything to me, and it turned out to be everything. I loved it. I loved being a mom. Some people hate the newborn phase. I loved the newborn phase. It was so fun. We wanted to have our kids close together for a few reasons, and we did. So we had my daughter Nina in 2018, and then in 2020 we had my daughter Chloe. They were 20 months apart. It was planned like that, and we wanted it like that. Something big that happened to me with my second birth with Chloe was that not only did I get something called preeclampsia, I also had a severe postpartum hemorrhage. But anyway, I lost a lot of blood. I lost 2.5 liters of blood in my hemorrhage. And I think that likely contributed. I think that was maybe the first thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. My doctors said in the beginning that I had postpartum depression, and I think this is really common. I think that a lot of women are told when they have symptoms like this, the first go-to, the easiest thing, doctors say when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, right? Think about the most common thing. So a woman who has recently had a baby is feeling really down. She's tired. She's not interested in things that she used to love. She can't get out of bed even. They say, oh, it's postpartum depression. Here's the fix. It's SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It's a type of med, right? So I started on an SSRI. It was called sertraline. And did it help? Sure. Whatever, I guess. No, it didn't help, because it wasn't postpartum depression. And I want to make sure that I am really clear about this for people who are new moms. If you physically can't get out of bed, you cannot drag your butt out of bed for any reason, your favorite thing that you used to do, that's not normal. So I had Chloe in 2020, May of 2020. And again, light of my life, but things started getting weird after that. I was tired, so tired. And they had told me it's postpartum depression, and I accepted that. And it took a lot for me to even go in and get help, like it does for a lot of women. We don't want to have to ask for help. We've just had babies. We've dreamed of being a mom our entire life. We finally have it, and it was our dream, and suddenly I can't enjoy it. Why can't I enjoy it? Why can't I enjoy my life? Why am I not able to do the things that I used to be able to do? And so I finally went in for help in late 2021. That's how long it took me to go ask for help. I was stubborn. And when I went in, I gave them the list of symptoms that I was having. I said, I'm having headaches, everyday headaches, and they go down my spine. They're severe at times. I said, I'm having exhaustion, fatigue, right? Loss of interest in activities that I used to love, loss of motivation. Like I said, I had pursued a master's degree. I was doing, public service through Teacher America. I was a really motivated person. I was active. I was a swimmer. And I couldn't, it's not that I didn't want to, I couldn't do these things anymore. And then in addition to that, and this is where it got weird, and this is where they should have looked more into it, and they didn't, and that's disappointing to me. I had shaking in my hands. My hands were shaking, and I thought it was exhaustion. I thought I was just so tired that I was shaking. And that's kind of how I presented it. I was like, I'm shaking from fatigue. I'm so tired. And they didn't test anything. They didn't do any testing. They just gave me depression meds. That it's disappointing. Anyway, I got pregnant again in early 2022. Again, we wanted to have 3 kids, and I was just going to push through because it was just depression, right? There was nothing physically wrong with me. It was just depression. So I was like, we're going to continue with our plan. We're going to continue with our life. And I got pregnant again. I was elated. I was so excited. I knew I loved being a mom, and I figured postpartum depression, it can't last forever, right? We'll have our 3rd baby and we will go on with the life plan, right? And at this time, I still was convinced that my symptoms were normal because that's what my doctor told me. It's normal. Yeah. And so then we had our daughter Lily, and I actually documented the whole pregnancy on YouTube. I don't think you could even tell at that time that I was getting more and more sick. Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. And we had Lily in October of 2022. It was still a joyful thing for us. I was still finding joy at that time in my life. During the birth, this will be important later, I used nitrous oxide anesthesia while I was in labor, and it's laughing gas. If you've ever been to the dentist, they give you inhale it, and it makes you feel kind of weird. It's funny. I can actually physically watch where my symptoms got significantly worse on YouTube. It's crazy. But anyway, the delivery went well. We had a healthy baby girl, and life continued on from there. Again, I had the baby. I kept pushing forward in life. And then by May of 2023, so we had Lily October 2022. In May of 2023, I had to go back. I had to go back to my doctor. Again, I'm stubborn. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to admit that something was wrong. My depression was worse, right? But I had to go back to the doctor for help. I was so tired. It got to the point where I couldn't cook anymore for my family. I couldn't clean anymore. I was working, parenting, and sleeping. That's it. That's all that my life was at that time. And I thought to myself at that point, having, been an advocate for other people, I was like, you know what? I'm going to advocate for myself. This is not okay. It's not depression. Test me for things, right? And I'm glad that I pushed. There are so many women who would not push, right? They would just accept that as their life, right? And that's not okay. But I said, you know what? Physically shaking from exhaustion is not normal. Test me for things. Do all the tests. I don't care how much it costs. Do the tests. So they conceded. They ran some blood tests, right? And this is when my first abnormal lab came back. The only abnormal lab I pretty much ever had until this year. And it was my ferritin. It was something I'd never heard of before. And I remember posting on Facebook about it. For all of my, female friends, I said, hey, your hemoglobin, your CBC, your complete blood count, it can be completely normal. And yet you can have something really wrong with you, right? It's your ferritin. It's called ferritin, right? And at this point, I thought that I had found it. I was like, great, I found it. I have low ferritin. We will fix my ferritin and I will go on my way and I will be happy, right? I'll be, the A1 mom again. And this thing where you have normal hemoglobin but low ferritin. It's called iron deficiency without anemia. And there are some really interesting studies on it and why it happens. And that's what I had. Almost never in my life have had anemia, which is low hemoglobin, right? My body is really good at making hemoglobin. We're really good at staying alive. We are not really good at functioning. I dragged my butt back into the doctor. I said, look at my labs. Do you see this? This is abnormal. There's a flag and it's low ferritin. I joined this Facebook group. It ended up being really, really useful for me. It was called the Iron Protocol. There are some people, some women particularly, who have, put their life into groups like this and advocating for women, and it's amazing. But anyway, I started the Iron Protocol. I started taking high dose iron every day, and it helped with some things. Prior to starting to take the iron, I was sleeping all the time, right? I would wake up in the morning, I would get my kids ready for daycare, send them off. I would go back to sleep, right? I would sleep until I had to drag my butt out of bed to work. I would work for a little bit. I couldn't make it through half a day. I would take a nap midday. I would work a little bit longer. I would take another 20-minute nap before I had to pick up my kids. I would cry because I was so tired. And then I would get my kids and I would take care of them in the evening. I would put them to bed at 7 o'clock and I would go back to sleep, and I would just keep doing it. That got a little bit better when I started on the Iron Protocol, which is basically just taking high dose iron every day. But it didn't fix the other things, right? So my fatigue got a little better. I could cut out, one of the naps I was taking every day. And I ended up pushing for iron infusions, right? Which is where you get intravenous iron. And if you knew me before all of this, you would know that that's a big deal because I had a severe phobia of needles. I would, before I had to go get my CBC and stuff for my pregnancies, I would stay up all night in a panic about having to get a blood draw the next day. I was severely scared of needles, which is funny now considering, you'll see in the story. But anyway, I got iron infusions and I was like, this is it. I'm going to get iron infusions. I don't have to take it orally. It's going to go right into my veins. My ferritin will come up and I will be better. Little did I know, no, that wasn't it. Okay. All of these things that I'm describing, again, not normal. So I was less fatigued, but the headaches that I was getting every day, the spinal pain, it was like a burning pain in my spine. And my tremor, which is what I later learned that the shaking in your hands is called. It's called tremor. And that was a thing I associated with old people, right? Essential tremor. It's an old person thing. I don't have that, right? But that's what I had, right? It was tremor. The other thing is I couldn't focus at work for the first time, even after getting the iron infusions, right? So I was a little bit more awake because my ferritin had come up to normal. But I couldn't focus. I couldn't do my job, which was really weird because I'm a very motivated person. And I started looking into ADHD. Do I have ADHD? I can't focus. I'd be working on something and then I would be like, oh, I need to go change the laundry. And then I would, be doing laundry I had switched jobs by this point. I had switched to a job that I could work from home because I couldn't make it through the day, right? And so anyway, I looked into ADHD and then I was convinced, oh, that's it. It's just ADHD. Our brain kind of latches onto whatever we can grab at that could explain all of the symptoms that we're having. So I was convinced I had ADHD. My doctor was like, yep, it sounds like you have ADHD. You can't focus. Let's try Adderall, right? Which is a stimulant medication. And again, like with the iron, it helped. It helped me for a little while. It helped me to stay awake a little bit longer. It helped me to focus at work. I could do, a few more hours at a time. of work, which was really good. I mean, it was a major improvement. And I thought that must be it, right? It's depression and ADHD and iron deficiency, right? I just have all of these things, right? Suddenly in adulthood, which you don't develop ADHD in adulthood. They've studied this. If you suddenly can't concentrate at work, but you did fine throughout school, there is something else going on. Anyway, so all of those things were starting to get better with all of these meds that we were starting to layer on top of each other. But the tremor and the spinal pain and the headaches, they were still there. And oftentimes they were worse, right? They were like progressing, getting worse and worse. At the time, this is going to be like shocking to some people, but not the people who are going through it. At the time, I told my doctor I'm taking over-the-counter pain medications to control the headaches and the spine pain and everything. Is it okay that I am taking ibuprofen and Tylenol every single day, every day, all the time? And the doctor was like, yeah, that's fine. You can keep doing that. You're fine. Your hemoglobin's fine. So, and your liver looks fine. So yeah, it's fine. It's no problem. So I was taking 4 ibuprofen at a time, that's 800 milligrams, plus 2 Tylenol, that's 1,000 milligrams. And I would take this cocktail every 4 hours from the time I woke up in the morning until the time I went to bed at 7 o'clock at night. And my doctor said, that's fine. Okay, nothing wrong with that. All of your labs look fine, so you can keep doing that. What a nightmare, right? If you know anything about NSAIDs right now, you are probably shaking your head because you know what comes next. NSAIDs do something in the body with prostaglandin, and what it does is it affects your stomach lining, it affects your gut, right? Where it starts to wear away the actual lining of your gut. And it was a huge mistake, right, for me to be taking so much ibuprofen. And we'll talk about why in a minute. My doctor eventually, when I kept bringing this up, said, okay, maybe it's time for you to go see a neurologist. And I was like, a neurologist? This is crazy. I don't need a neurologist. I just need you to tell me what's wrong. She sent me to a neurologist, and the neurologist, probably rightly, said, your body is dependent on and addicted to ibuprofen. And what you're having is called migraines. And your migraines are going down your spine, and that can happen. And what we need to do is get you off ibuprofen. And I was appalled by this because ibuprofen was getting me through my day. And she said, we're going to start a preventative medication. It prevents you from having migraines. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, well, I guess I have migraines now. So let's add amitriptyline onto the medication stack, right? So I was doing that. I was trying so hard not to take ibuprofen. She ended up having to give me a steroid so that I could get through this horrible time where I was cutting ibuprofen completely out. I was in so much pain. I was in tears every day. And we didn't know why. Why was I suddenly developing severe migraine every day? And the amitriptyline, it helped a little bit, right? But again, it didn't fix everything. What was going on? What was wrong? About this time, I started getting severe diarrhea every day. This is embarrassing to admit to the internet at large, but here it is. When I was taking all of this ibuprofen, I was getting diarrhea every day. And, I had stopped the ibuprofen for a while when I saw the neurologist. I was in too much pain. I couldn't not take it. So I took the amitriptyline and I took the ibuprofen, right? I took it all because I was desperate for the pain to stop so that I could be a mom, so that I could work my job, right? And at the time, I was taking mega doses of iron because of the iron deficiency. I didn't want to have to keep getting iron infusions because they were expensive and we were already spending too much on my healthcare. And so I was having diarrhea every day, and it was black because when you're taking huge doses of iron, it goes through your stomach and your stool comes out blackish. And what I didn't know at the time was that black liquid diarrhea is a huge red flag for GI bleeding, right? You get ulcers throughout your stomach, throughout your intestines, and you start losing all of the iron that you're putting in. I doubled my iron, the iron intake that I was having. I went up to like 600 milligrams of iron every day, and my condition just kept getting worse because now I was iron deficient, and I was on ibuprofen for the pain. And there was this other thing, this mysterious illness thing that was making me sick. And yeah, so adding GI bleeding on top, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but my doctors weren't helping me. They weren't helping me find what was wrong. And I went to go at that time to see a hematologist to try to figure out what was going on. Like with my blood and why my iron kept dropping. Of course, it was because I was losing a massive amount of blood through my GI system. She said, there's, I can't find anything. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. She couldn't find anything wrong. I was taking a B vitamin, like a B complex at the time. And she did a bunch of testing, and she called to tell me, hey, your vitamin B12, which I knew nothing about at the time. She said, your vitamin B12 is a little high. At the time, it was 813, I think it's picograms per milliliter. And she said, it's a little high. So I want you to stop your B complex. You don't need it anymore. Stop taking that. And I did. I stopped taking it. I was still taking a women's 1-a-day multivitamin because I was still trying to breastfeed my baby. And they say you need to be on a women's 1-a-day with folic acid when you're breastfeeding. So I was. And at this point, I was starting to get really scared. In May of 2024, I ended up at the ER because my diarrhea had become so severe that I was getting dehydrated. I felt like I couldn't really eat anything because I was having severe stomach pain. Shocker. And I went into the ER. I told them this. They checked all of my labs, and my hemoglobin was normal. So they said, no, it's not a GI bleed. You're fine. You can go. And I was like, no, please. Can you test my stool to see if there's blood? Please, can you test it? And the nurse in the ER kind of like rolled their eyes and was like, okay, sure, whatever, here's the thing, see if you can, provide a stool sample. So I did. And the nurse, takes the thing and goes, oh my God, this is like black. And I'm like, yes, I told you that. And, the nurse tested it. Tested the stool sample. They have this little thing called a FOBT, a fecal occult blood test. And of course, it was positive. It was strongly positive. I was bleeding out through my GI system. My hemoglobin, while I was there for like 2 hours, went from 14 to 13. And, it was actively dropping. But they said, your hemoglobin's still normal. You can go, but you should follow up with GI. So they set me up with an appointment with a GI specialist, and I went to go see the GI specialist, and I thought, this is it. I have found it. They're gonna fix me, and I'm gonna be a super mom, and I'm gonna be great at work, and all of my dreams are gonna come true, right? I did a bunch of research. I found out that ulcers, especially if they're really bad, they can cause radiating pain into your back. And I was like, oh, eureka, I have found it. I have an ulcer. It's really bad. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm dying. I might be bleeding out, right? I was panicked because there was something really wrong, and everyone kept telling me everything's normal. I ended up going in for a full GI workup. I was 33 at the time. And I had to have an EGD, which is where they put you out and they put a scope down your throat, right? And they look into your stomach and the first part of your intestines, and they look for ulcer bleeding. And so they put me under, and I remember waking up from that and the doctor saying, "Congratulations, there is nothing wrong with you." And I freaked out. I bawled. I was sobbing here in this room with this poor doctor. He probably thought I was a nutcase. Probably everyone did at the time. And, you know, I was sobbing because these doctors kept telling me there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. But there was very clearly something wrong, right? So they were like, okay, we will schedule you for a colonoscopy. Maybe you have bleeding that's in the lower GI tract. So I did the colonoscopy prep, which is horrible. If you're someone who's older or someone who's been through this, you know that you have to drink like a gallon of laxative and then you poop your brains out for like 12 hours. And then you go in and you get put under and you get a, camera put up your rectum. And oh my gosh, it was humiliating. It was humiliating for me. And I woke up from the colonoscopy and they said, "Congratulations, there is nothing wrong." And at that point, I was just like, okay, thank you for your time, right? I went back into the GI specialist a week later and I said, "Look, there is something wrong. It has got to be in my small intestine. It is a small intestinal bleed. You can't see that with the EGD. You can't see that with the colonoscopy. It's got to be that. I'm bleeding somewhere." So they were like, okay, we'll do this expensive test called a pill cam. You swallow this pill. It's a camera. It's actually really awesome, amazing technology. It goes through your whole digestive system and it takes pictures of everything. And they said, "Congratulations, there's nothing wrong." And at that point, I was devastated. I didn't know where to go next. I didn't know what to do. My GI system was a mess. I was having diarrhea all the time, 100% of the time. I never had digested food coming through me. I wasn't getting any nutrients anymore. I was starving. And I was starting to lose really a lot of weight. And then I started doing a ton of research. I was like, no, I'm going to figure this out. I am not just going to die. My kids need me. I have 3 kids. They already don't have a mother because I'm too sick to mother them, but I will figure this out. And I found out about this condition called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And I said, this is it. I have SIBO. I have to have SIBO. This is it. And I told my doctor. They said, that's kind of a niche thing. It's kind of not a real thing. If you really want, we can test you for it. But that's getting into kind of like integrative medicine. It's not really, are you sure you're not depressed? And, it was horrible. So I purchased on my own, there's a breath test that you can get. It's called Trio Smart. And I did the breath test from home. It was expensive, but I was determined to figure out what was wrong, even if my doctors would not do it. So I got the breath test, I took it, and it was positive. And I was like, oh my God, I have SIBO. SIBO is the thing. SIBO is what's killing me. This is the root of my chronic illness. I took it to my doctor. My doctor looked at it. He saw that it's kind of a validated test. He saw that it's not necessarily a niche thing. It's a real thing. And he said, okay, you have bad bacteria growing in your small intestine, and we need to kill it in order for you to have, healthy digestion again. And so I got a prescription for something called metronidazole. It's an antibiotic. It's very strong. It was horrible for me while I was on it, and it didn't work. So the first time it didn't work. We did another round of it to see if we could get it to go away, and my PCP was really trying. He was really trying to help me, and so I did another course of the metronidazole, and still nothing. I was still really sick, right? I was having diarrhea every day. So I did a bunch of research and I said, okay, what can I do? What can I do? There's another, antibiotic that you can try. It's called rifaximin, but my insurance wouldn't cover it. So I said, fine, I'm going to try this all liquid diet. It's called the elemental diet. It's basically what they put in feeding tubes for people with very severe GI problems that they can't fix otherwise. I was desperate. So I had to ask my family for help to pay for this extremely expensive liquid diet. And it came and I got it. And I had only these shakes. It's everything nutritionally that your body needs in a shake, and it tastes absolutely disgusting. And you're not allowed to supplement anything else while you're taking the shakes. You just take the shakes. It's the only thing you put in your body for the amount of time that you are on the elemental diet. And so I did that. And after 3 weeks of this liquid diet, I was probably getting 500 calories a day. It burned so bad when I drank it. It burned like the devil. But I just kept going because I am stubborn as heck. And by the end of 3 weeks, finally, I started having some more normal digestion. I was like, oh my God, yay. I've killed my SIBO. This is it. Now I'm going to go back to my normal life. And let's see. And then I started reintroducing normal foods. A lot of foods immediately made the diarrhea come back. That can be kind of normal when you've only been on a liquid diet for a long time. Introducing foods can be tough. And this was when I started getting weird allergic reactions to things. I have never had food allergies before in my life. I've never been allergic to anything. I'm not allergic to anything. But certain things either made the diarrhea way worse, or, here's a weird thing, made the spinal pain significantly worse. My spine would burn so bad when I would eat certain things. And I spent weeks logging. I would write down, what did I eat? What are my symptoms? I would pore over this. I was obsessive about trying to figure out how what I was eating was contributing to all of these symptoms. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, here are my safe foods: rice, plain rice, and gluten-free chicken nuggets, or plain meat. But I'm not a plain meat person. Like, I couldn't just eat plain meat. So I went for gluten-free chicken nuggets. And I spent probably 6 weeks eating only gluten-free chicken nuggets. Seriously, because it was the only thing that could get me through the day and get me enough calories that I was not losing weight. I had lost probably 60 pounds by this time. It was massive weight loss. It was scary, and it was scaring my doctor too, but he didn't know what to do. This is when he started saying, I think you might need more help than I can give you. And that's fine. I love when doctors say that because that's honest, and it's not saying there's nothing wrong with you. He was saying, there's something wrong with you, but I don't know what it is, and I can't figure it out. And I respected that. I appreciated that. He said, look, I think you might need to go to Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic to get the help that you need. And I was like, no. I have allergies all of a sudden. I've learned about this condition. It's called MCAS, right? And it's like this mast cell problem. It's this problem with histamine in your body. Your body can't get rid of histamine. You start, having reactions to all kinds of things. And I was convinced. I knew that it was mast cell activation syndrome. I bought this book about it, and I listened to it, and I heard myself in all of these patients that the doctor was talking about in his book. And I thought for sure it was that. And I brought it to my doctor, and I was like, look, there's, mast cell activation syndrome. It's this. And my doctor was like, look, this is outside of my scope. I can't help you with this. You need to get a specialist who can actually help you. And it was frustrating, but again, I appreciated that. And I don't know. And at that point I was researching, I was trying to figure out, where do I go from here? How can I get the help that I need? This was the end of 2024. And this was the time in my life where I was at my low point. And I know that there are other people who are living in this low point because they've messaged me. Hundreds of them have messaged me in the last couple of days. And so here's what happened. It was October of 2024. And I went to the ER with my husband. I was like, look, we're going to the ER. The ER is going to help me. I'm dying. And we're going to go to the emergency room, and they are going to fix me. They're going to figure it out. And it was because I couldn't get out of bed. I had mustered up the strength for the first time in probably a week to take a shower. And I got into the shower, and my vision was so blurry, and there were just like weird things like floating about in my vision. I went to open the shampoo bottle. I remember I tried 3 times, and my hands were shaking so bad. I dropped the shampoo a few times, and that's when I collapsed in the shower and sobbed. And I was like, we're going to the ER. I'm dying. My body is shutting down. This is not normal. And we went to the ER, and it was a local ER. It wasn't University of Michigan. It was the one in Ypsilanti, St. Joe's, Trinity, whatever. And I was convinced that this was it. They were going to find my cancer. They were going to find whatever it was that was killing me. And they didn't even run any real tests. They took a little bit of blood. I explained that I had been doing this elemental diet. They said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. I was sobbing in the ER. They said, you really need to be screened for depression. And they said, the only thing that's weird is that your vitamin B12 level has come back high, above the range of normal, high. It was 1,018, picograms per milliliter. It's a little high. It's higher than the top range. And at this time, I was not taking any supplements because I was either eating just gluten-free chicken nuggets, or I was drinking the elemental diet shakes, or I was doing some combination. And I told them that. I said, I'm not taking any supplements. The only thing I'm having is this physician's elemental diet, and it's basically what goes in a tube feed. But they had never heard of it. They were like, oh, you're on some special diet? Okay, great. Stop that. It's that. You've got B12 toxicity, right? You are poisoning yourself with B12. And I was like, no, please. It's not that. I'm dying, please. And they probably rolled their eyes. They probably went in the back and made fun of me and said, oh, here's another, Munchausen's case. She's here for attention. And they said, we're going to discharge you. And, if you disagree with that, then you can go to another hospital. And I remember my husband basically carrying me back to the car, and he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, maybe we should go to U of M because they're better. And he was like, I will take you there, but they are not going to cover this under our insurance because you were just dismissed from a hospital and, discharged from a hospital, and there's nothing wrong. And I said, okay, just take me to psych. Just take me to the psych ward because I am so crazy that I'm manifesting physical symptoms. And I really thought that I was crazy. My husband held me there for a while and just let me sob. And he told me something I'll never forget. He said, I believe you. He said, I know you're not crazy. I've watched you. I've seen the symptoms. It's not in your head. It's real. And we will find out what's wrong. know there are a lot of people who are in the dark place where I went that day. And they've been told so many times that it's depression, it's anxiety, it's in your head. And you have these crazy symptoms and you can't get out of bed. You physically can't get out of bed. You're shaking too hard. You have too much pain. You can't create that much pain in your head. You can't, okay? If you are in that much pain, if you are in the dark place, right? It's not in your head, okay? It's real. I, at that point, said, screw it. We can sell our house. We can sell everything. We're going to go to a functional medicine provider, which is out of pocket, and we'll find one and they will help us figure it out. I didn't believe in functional medicine at the time. I thought it was stupid. I thought they were going to have me do some parasite cleanse or something and that I was going to waste my money and still be sick. I was convinced that's what was going to happen. And so I broke down and I made an appointment with a functional medicine provider locally. I just picked one. I asked on Facebook, who knows of a functional doctor, in Ann Arbor who can help, because I need help. I can't, my doctors aren't helping me and I'm dying. And someone suggested a name and I threw a dart at it and I picked someone, right? I picked anyone, but I was desperate. I would have, I could have gone there and if they said, well, let's start with a $10,000 cleanse, I would have said, okay. They didn't. They, first focused on getting more nutrition into my body, and that was great. They helped me find a few foods that I could eat. They started me on a probiotic. They started me on a medicine called low-dose naltrexone, which is still being studied. It actually helped with the pain. It was one of the few things that was on par with ibuprofen in terms of how much it helped the pain. And I still don't know why low-dose naltrexone helps. It doesn't make sense to me. I need to do more research into how it works. I think it has to do with inflammation in the body. Anyway, I talked to the functional doctor about MCAS. I said, maybe I have MCAS. I found this thing. She said, MCAS is real. That's a real thing. Some people have it. There's a med called cromolyn we can try. And I tried cromolyn and it didn't help. It didn't do anything, right? And so, at my second visit with them, I told them, all of my recent labs are normal. Everything's normal except for my stupid vitamin B12 keeps going up and I'm not taking vitamin B12. Now it's over 2,000 and I'm not taking it. And my functional doctor looked at me for a little bit and she said, you know what? I think you need to take vitamin B12 injections. And I thought she was bananas. I was like, look, the ER told me that I have B12 toxicity. I need to get this stuff out of my system, not start injecting it into my body. But I was desperate, right? I was like, this person has gone to med school. I haven't. And nobody else has said anything useful. So at this point, sure, let's start injecting the thing that's killing me and at least it'll go faster, right? And so kind of sat on the prescription for a while. Then I filled it at a local compounding pharmacy, which again sounded like BS to me because it was all out of pocket. And 15 of these injections were $100 and we didn't have $100 to spend on it. But, we asked our parents to help and they did. And, I went to the pharmacy and there was this nice guy who sat me down and he showed me how to give myself an injection at home. And if you'll remember in the beginning of the story, I was terrified of needles, terrified. I kind of cried a little bit and I said, okay, whatever. And they gave me the injection. They did my first one there at the pharmacy. And about an hour later, we got home and suddenly my tremor stopped for the first time. I wasn't shaking. And then I was due for my next dose of pain meds, but I didn't have spinal pain for the first time in a long time. And my kids were playing and I wanted to engage with them. I wanted to play with them, whereas I normally was too tired to do that. And I looked at my husband and I said, oh my God, it's vitamin B12. My vitamin B12 is low. There's something wrong with my vitamin B12. And I was so excited. It was the first time in forever that someone had suggested doing something and I did it and it made a difference. It made a real difference. I was so excited. I had hope for the first time. I couldn't understand it. I didn't get why my vitamin B12 levels kept going up, and everyone kept telling me take less vitamin B12, cut it out of everything, don't even take a multivitamin anymore because you have toxicity, and yet injecting it suddenly made a huge difference. I remember running around the house with my kids laughing and thinking, oh my God, I have joy again. This is it. This is my life. I have my life back. I found it. It's vitamin B12. I kept doing the injections. I had 3 amazing days, 3 days without pain for the first time in years because of these injections. And I joined a bunch of B12 groups on Facebook, and I, looked and I researched and I was like, what the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? Most of these people in these groups had their vitamin B12 tested and it was low. They got the shots and then they felt better. Mine was high, sky high, weirdly high. And I got the injections and I felt better. I couldn't make any sense of it. It didn't make sense to me. But these groups had warned me that you often get something called paradoxical worsening, which is where you have kind of this honeymoon period where you first start the injections, and then things get bad again. And, they warn you, they tell you to expect this. And it did. I had 3 amazing days, and then I had a bunch of days of, back to my normal symptoms, sometimes even a little bit worse. But I knew to expect this and I knew it was normal. So I kept going, and I would wake up in the morning, sobbing in pain, shaking. I could barely stand, like normal, like my normal bad. And then I would do my shot and I would have like 6 hours of normal life where I could do what I wanted and I could do it without pain and I could focus, and it was amazing. And I just kept going. I kept going with it. And I called my functional provider and I said, look, I can't do these shots every other day like you've told me to do. I need them every day. And really, they're not lasting the whole day, but if you could just give me 1 a day, please, can we try it? And she said, yes, we can try it. I'll up your prescription. And of course it was more expensive, more money we didn't have, but our parents supported us, right? And I could go on a whole rant about our parents, and our support systems being the most important thing. But anyway, I started doing every day high dose B12 injections, and I kept doing research and I kept learning about B12, vitamin B12. It became an obsession for me. And it's the coolest thing in the world, vitamin B12, right? It does all of these things. It's really complicated. It's awesome. And there's this thing called pernicious anemia. And, some of us have heard of it from like TV shows and stuff. It's not a thing that's common in young people. It's a thing that's common in old people over the age of 80. And what it is that you develop these, it's autoimmune. You develop these antibodies to something called intrinsic factor. And intrinsic factor is something that kind of takes B12 from the foods and the supplements that you eat in your stomach, and it shuttles it into your bloodstream, right? So that your body can use it. But if you have antibodies to intrinsic factor, it can't do that, right? And it just goes right through you, and you don't get enough vitamin B12. And with long enough without any vitamin B12, just like, used to be before vitamin B12 supplements and injections were found, you die when you have pernicious anemia. You just get worse and worse and worse until you die. It used to be a death sentence, and now it's not. So now people who have these intrinsic factor antibodies can get the injections. And I took all this to my PCP and I said, look, I've done something kind of crazy. I hope it's okay with you. I've started vitamin B12 injections, and I'm doing them every day, and I'm doing them high dose. And I want to be tested for intrinsic factor antibodies. And he was kind of like, nah, I don't think it's B12. I don't think you should be doing this. This doesn't sound right. However, it's not going to hurt you. You're just paying for nothing. But okay, sure, whatever. Let's test for the antibodies, whatever you want. And I got the results back from that test, and it was positive. I have pernicious anemia. What? It was crazy, and it was validating, and it was amazing. I was like, oh my God, I have pernicious anemia? What? Like, this is insane, right? I'm like some old storybook thing. Like, this is not a real thing for young people. How could this be? Anyway, and so the shots made me feel better and better and better. And the first thing that I noticed in terms of improvement, and it took a while, but the first major improvement I noticed is that about a month in, I did my morning injection, and I was looking out the window. We live in a forest, and I was looking out the window like I normally do, and I could see every single leaf on the trees. I couldn't see that before. It was kind of like this big green swath outside. And I was like, holy crap, I can see everything. I can see every leaf on every tree. I can see it all. And it was like, if you've ever been to Best Buy and you've seen all of those mega HD TVs kind of lined up on the wall, and you've looked at them closely and it's like, whoa, it's so crisp, right? It was like that, but in my own eyeballs. And I was like, I had not realized that I had lost so much vision. I didn't realize that I couldn't see long distance, right? And now suddenly after my shot, I can see long distance. And, after I did my daily, it would usually last, I do my shot, the vision would clear and crisp like that for, a period of time. In the beginning, it was probably only 3-4 hours. It would be super crisp. And then it would, fade back out and blur back out. And I went to a couple of eye doctors, and I said, hey, there's something going on with my optic nerve. Can you check it out? Because when I do my B12 shot, I have pernicious anemia. When I do my B12 shot, my vision clears really good. I just want to check my optic nerve. And the first guy is like, no, we won't even do the test. That's not a thing. Okay, wouldn't even do the test. That is the way that women are treated in our healthcare system. I went to go see a second person because I was like, at this point, I know how to advocate for myself. I was like, screw that guy. That's a bad doctor. That's a bad doctor, right? I went to a second person. I said, please, can you look at my optic nerve? I explained the situation, and she was like, huh, that's so interesting. That's so strange. Of course, I'll do the testing. Let's do it. She did all of this testing on my eyes. She showed me all the testing. She said, actually, your optic nerve looks fine. It's functioning fine. You have cataracts at the age of 34, which is strange, and it's a very young age to have cataracts, but there's nothing physically wrong with your optic nerve, and that's a good thing. And I was like, okay, awesome. Thank you so much for looking. Thank you for testing it. Thank you for confirming for me that everything is okay, because it could have not been okay, right? That was a good thing because it means that my eyesight is not permanently damaged. My optic nerve, B12, is very connected to your nerve health. It causes burning pain in your nerves if you have a deficiency. Anyway, my optic nerve had been malfunctioning, but it was neuro, right? It was in the brain rather than physically in the optic nerve. So that's what we figured out. And anyway, I was so excited. I was so happy. Everything was going swell. And then about 2 months into the shots, they stopped working. And I went back to the dark place. I was like, oh my God, maybe I don't have pernicious anemia. You know, maybe it was a false positive on the intrinsic factor antibody test that almost doesn't exist. The test is 98.5 to 100% specific for pernicious anemia. Anyway, and so I posted on my B12 groups. I was like, hey, I was doing great, and now I'm backsliding on the same amount of B12. What's going on? I also reached out to my functional doctor and explained. And the answer I got was, you're not getting enough folate. You need folate in addition to vitamin B12. So I had corrected my vitamin B12 deficiency, but I had used up my body's supply of folate, which had already been low. And it kept getting lower and lower, and I kept getting worse and worse until I depleted it fully. And I went to my PCP and I said, hey, look, we need to test my folate because I think it's going to be like 0. And he did a blood test for the folate, and guess what? High, over 24. It was above the upper, range. And I was like, why can't we have one serum test that's just accurate, right? That just tells the truth. Because I know it's low folate. I'm having all of these symptoms that are very connected to folate, according to all these people on the internet, which of course, not a good argument to a doctor. And so some of the symptoms I was having, it was the energy thing had come back. But in addition, I was having weird visual changes, things like, it looked like there were sometimes like little bubbles or something floating through the air. Anything that had a pattern, anything like a rug or a pillow on my couch that had a pattern on it, checkers, stripes, anything like that, the pattern would jump around and vibrate like horribly to the point where I was getting nauseous and throwing up. It felt like migraine aura, but like on steroids. It was debilitating again. And so I was like, how could I possibly have, and I had ulcers in my mouth, weird stuff with my tongue, all kinds of like things on my tongue, like red spots and stuff. It hurt. The inside of my nose started to hurt really bad and crack. Okay, and then I developed this weird symptom, this symptom that I find hard to even put into words. I don't know that there's a word for the symptom, but what it was that I had this aversion to socialization. I had this aversion to being with people. It's like, I would get through my day and it would be time to pick up my daughters who were my life, right? And I would be vehemently opposed to being with them. I would cry because I had to spend time with other people. People would call me, my grandparents would call me, whatever, just people in general would call me, email me, text me, and it would give me such crippling anxiety or like anger. Like I couldn't understand why people wanted to be with me, right? It was very out of character for me, and yet I couldn't control it, and I could see that it was happening as if I was watching it from somewhere else, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't be around other people. And then I started looking into folate. I was researching. I'm like, what is going on with folate? What is the folate connection here? And why is it making me have these weird things? I was also having like weird jumping spasms and tics and things. and I couldn't be around other people. I couldn't socialize. I would shut down in social situations. And I started looking into folate and what does folate do, and why do I have high folate but I have all these low folate symptoms, and what does it have to do with vitamin B12? Like, what is all of this stuff? It was so frustrating, and it didn't feel like there were answers. And like any good millennial, right? I pulled out my phone. I pulled up ChatGPT because I was like, let's leverage AI, right? And I would put in all these prompts, all these questions. I would put in my symptoms, every symptom I was having. What can cause this symptom? What can cause this symptom? And I would narrow it down further and further. It was always B12 or folate or both, right? And I'm like, why? Why is this going? I'm injecting B12. Why are my injections suddenly not working? And what does it have to do with folate? And then ChatGPT was like, well, there's this thing called cerebral folate deficiency, and usually you're born with it, right? It's cerebral folate deficiency syndrome, right? And kids born with it are very, very sick right from the beginning. But there's been a few cases recently, new cases of adults developing it. And, you know, there are, you know, here are the couple of case studies of this developing. And I was like, why would this like suddenly develop in an adult like myself? Like, why would this be? And ChatGPT was like, well, you know, there's all these genetic variants that cause problems with folate processing in people with MTHFR and related variants. And I was like, oh, don't get me started on this genetic, you know, BS that I've seen online. MTHFR, we all know that looks like mother, right? I'm like, this is stupid, and this is a waste of my time. Next. And then I read the case studies, and the symptoms that these people were having were verbatim exactly my symptoms, exactly. And I was like, huh, how does this work? So what it is that if you have certain gene variants and you intake a lot of folic acid, which is in America, it's in all wheat products, breads, cereals, pastas, anything fortified, and you eat too much folic acid. Oh, it's also, a lot of it is in prenatal vitamins, which I had been on since 2018. The folic acid builds up in your blood. It's unmetabolized because your body can't process it fast enough. Your body is very slow at processing folic acid, and this folic acid binds to your receptors, and it blocks out the folate that you're getting from foods, such that you have high serum folate or normal serum folate. You know, it's in the blood test, it looks normal, but it's not getting into your cerebrospinal fluid, aka it's not getting into your brain, right? And so you start developing all of these symptoms that look basically like autism. And I was like, yeah, I'd say I basically have autism. Yes. And I kind of laughed it off, right? I was like, oh, this is so silly. And then I started looking into studies on kids with autism. And there are all of these studies, new research showing that there's something called a folate receptor alpha. And 75% of children with autism are testing positive for autoantibodies against the folate receptor alpha. And I was like, wait, so 75% of people with my symptoms, kids with autism, etc., aren't getting enough folate in their brain, and it's all because of folic acid, which is being dumped into our food system. And nobody thinks that this whole MTHFR thing is a real thing because half of people have it, and yet women are getting sick disproportionately, and yet women are the ones taking all of this folic acid because they are told they need it to prevent spina bifida in their children. Do I have that right? And ChatGPT is like, yep. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. So ChatGPT, what is the way to fix this? And ChatGPT goes, well, you just have to take high dose of one of these two meds, either methylfolate or folinic acid. And I was like, where do I get that? And ChatGPT is like, let me search the internet for you. Brrr. Here it is on Amazon. Would you like to try it? And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's just try it. Let's just see. We'll prove that this all is a crazy conspiracy theory. And I bought it. I bought folinic acid. It's also known as leucovorin. Leucovorin, I think is how you say it. You can get it prescription or you can get it over the counter. So I bought it and I took 5 milligrams of it. And I noticed that my symptoms got a little bit better. And then I was like, okay, it's a little bit better, but this is not the thing. This is not world-ending, life-changing. And I told ChatGPT, look, I tried 5 milligrams of this thing and it didn't work, so I don't think that's it. And ChatGPT's like, no. In these case studies on how you fix cerebral folate deficiency, you need high dose, the type of doses that nobody would just take on a Sunday, right? You need to take like 25 to 60 milligrams of this med. It's really a lot. And I was like, that sounds crazy, right? Is that going to kill me? Can I die from that? Can I overdose? And ChatGPT's like, nope, you can't. As long as you're good on B12, it's not going to hurt you. And I was like, well, I'm good on B12. I'm injecting like mega doses of B12 every day. So then on my birthday, April 3rd, 2025, it had gotten bad to the point again where I was laying in bed all day. I was just staring at the wall. I was very averse to seeing people. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. My spine hurt. Everything hurt. I was like, okay, I'm dying again. Right? April 3rd, 2025. I was like, screw it. I grabbed my bottle of folinic acid. I looked at it. I was like 800 micrograms per pill. And I dumped 20 pills in my hand. And I was like, well, if I'm going to die, might as well do it on my birthday, right? And I took 20 pills, right? And I was like, this is it. This is how she goes, right? And everything stopped. All of the negative symptoms went away. I felt okay again, right? I felt suddenly like I could live. I felt really weird, actually. I felt kind of joyful. I pulled out my phone and I did something other than research medical stuff on ChatGPT. I was like, let's just scroll Facebook and see what other people are up to, right? And I saw this thing on Wicked, the movie, and I was like, oh, they made a movie about Wicked. I used to think that would be a cool musical to see. Maybe I'll watch Wicked. Maybe I'll get the movie Wicked and I'll just watch it. And I sat down on my couch and I watched a whole movie for the first time in 4 years. And I remember sitting there watching this scene where Alphaba is dancing, right? And she feels really disconnected from everyone and she feels really unseen, and a tear rolls down her face as for the first time she gets accepted into social situations. And I was crying. I was crying in joy for another person. And then that day I downloaded the soundtrack to the movie and I listened to music. For the first time in years, I was listening to music for fun, for joy. And I went outside and I gardened. I was in the garden and I was having fun. And then I came in and I told my husband about it and I shared with him. We talked joyfully about something. It was this insane thing that was happening to me. It was like I suddenly had me back. I had emotions. I had connections with other human beings. I cared about being alive. I cared about my garden, something that used to be so important to me. And now suddenly I cared about it again. And I haven't missed a day of folinic acid since. And I have gotten better and better every single day since I started it. And it's insane. I mean, it's completely insane to me that this could be a real thing, but that's what worked. And then I went to my PCP again and I brought him all of these annotated articles. I said, look, there's this antibody to folate receptor alpha, and it can be in the blood, and there's a test available. You don't have to get a spinal tap, which is how you used to test for cerebral folate deficiency. You can just test for the antibody in your blood. And I said, look, I know this sounds crazy, but can we test for this? And he looked at everything, and he looked at me, and he was like, let's order the test and see. So I just wanted to tell you guys, look, order the test and see. Or if you can't do that, it's $300. It might be out of reach for you. It's only available in the US. Try the folinic acid, try methylfolate, take a high dose and see if you get your U back. If there is anyone who could be helped by this and this is their answer, and it's that easy, and it took me years to find this, and it's not a thing that people would just try, right? Could this be your answer? I had to do a bunch of research. I had to do a bunch of testing. This stuff doesn't work. This protocol doesn't work for me unless I cut out synthetic folic acid. Why? Because the more unmetabolized folic acid you have in your blood, the less folate is getting into your cerebrospinal fluid. And it gives you all of these symptoms that to anyone else, they might call chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID or MCAS or SIRS. And yet what it is a folate deficiency, because you have genetic variants that everyone has dismissed because they're common, right? As are all of these chronic illnesses. And anyway, you have to cut out folic acid from your diet. It's in all wheat products, but it's often not in organic wheat products. But you can't mix and match, right? If you have too much folic acid, it's not going to work. If I have folic acid in my diet, if I accidentally eat something with folic acid, I'm exhausted. I can't get out of bed. I don't really care about my life anymore, right? It's like, for now, I still have enough built up in my blood that it's a big problem for me. The autoantibodies, from what I'm reading, can go away over time if you get rid of this burden of folic acid that's in your blood, and you can go back to normal. And yeah, the other thing that you need to know is that if you are B12 deficient and you take folate, it makes your symptoms worse. Why? Because you need both B12 and folate. They go hand in hand. You have to have them together in order to get rid of the neurological symptoms, things like fatigue, brain fog, headaches, pain, burning pain, tingling, numbness, disconnect from the things that you used to care about, no motivation, all of these things that so many people are dealing with and that they are told is in their head. I've learned really a lot about folate and B12 and the connection to chronic illness in the last few months. It's all I've done. It's all I could do. The deficiencies, they don't show up on routine blood work, and people with them are often told that they have depression or anxiety by their primary care physicians. They go to a functional medicine doctor. They are tested for everything under the sun. They lose all their money, and they are told that they have non-celiac gluten intolerance, POTS, EDS, MCAS, long COVID, ME/CFS, SIBO, SIRS, chronic Lyme, etc. But what if these things are consequences of folic acid and not the root cause? Folate and B12 are at the root of human health. We know this. It's been studied and established. What hasn't been studied and established, except for by emerging researchers who are just starting to put the pieces together and who have not spread the word yet, is that deficiencies can be caused by folic acid, and that deficiencies in these things can cause untold amounts of damage to the human body. It can make you feel like you're dead. If there's interest, I'm happy to share the research. It's not pseudoscience, it's established. And I'm happy to share what I know about it, and I'm happy to talk about it with you and how I am getting my life back. So what can you do if you are someone who is going through these things? Well, first of all, I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. I know that sounds stupid, but I intend to continue posting about this, sharing the word. I want to help other people because I thought I was going to die and now I'm back. And if there is even one other person who can feel this way, I want them to know it. I would ask you to send this video to one other person who could benefit from it. There's this scene, if you've ever seen the show Grey's Anatomy, there's this scene where Dr. Gray and Dr. Yang, they're both going through some really hard stuff in their personal life. And everyone is telling Dr. Gray to talk Dr. Yang off the cliff. She's really going through it and she's shutting down. And Dr. Gray says, not everyone has to be happy all the time. That's not mental health, that's crap. She turns to her best friend and she says, Christina, are you in the dark place? And Yang replies, yes. And Gray shrugs and she says, me too. And that's it. If you know someone who's in the dark place, please share this video with them. Go be with them in the dark place. And then I want you to tell them what my husband told me. You are not alone. You are not crazy. Your symptoms are real. Your illness is real. And you will find a cure. Thank you so much for watching, and please put comments down below, questions that you have. If you are skeptical, good. I encourage you to be skeptical. You should be. You should ask questions. You should do the research yourself. You should look into it. You should look into the testing. You should push back, because that's how science works. We present an idea and we push back, and then we answer questions and we figure it out together. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your incredible support, for the love. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys and to getting to know you. And hopefully I'm looking forward to hearing your stories soon about how you're getting better.